The crimson dawn of Aries, a sacrifice in the stars. We begin our journey in the whispering dark, beneath the vast, silent tapestry we call the night sky. Welcome, traveler, to the circle of little animals, the zodiac, a place where every star is not merely a distant burning orb of gas, but a syllable in an ancient story. Here, light is memory, and darkness is the ink of forgotten ages. These are not the gentle prophecies of a daily horoscope. They are the raw, tangled, and often tragic legends from which those symbols were born, etched into the cosmos as a permanent testament to the passions of gods and the plights of mortals. Look up. That familiar pull you feel, that instinct to connect the dots and find patterns in the void, is a practice the ancients called catasterism, the art of placing heroes, monsters, and memories into the heavens. They did not see cold constellations. They saw a celestial gallery of frozen moments, each one a memorial to an act of breathtaking love, horrifying vengeance, or desperate courage. The zodiac is the most enduring of these galleries, a celestial road upon which the sun walks its annual pilgrimage. And as we begin this journey at the very dawn of that road, we find that the first step is not one of triumphant creation, but of harrowing escape and profound sacrifice. We begin with Aries, the ram, whose fleece was spun from sunlight and whose story is soaked in sorrow. To understand why a ram marks the beginning of the astrological year, heralding the vibrant rebirth of spring, we must first descend from the serene heavens into the smoky halls of a mortal kingdom, a place of insidious whispers and broken vows. Our story unfolds in Boeotia, a land ruled by King Athamos, a man whose heart was a battlefield for the affections of two formidable women, one born of the heavens, the other rooted firmly and ruthlessly in the earth. His first wife was Nephele, a creature of divine origin, a nymph fashioned from the clouds themselves by the hand of Hera. She was ethereal and gentle, her love as soft as mist, and she gave the king two children who shone with her otherworldly grace, a son, Phrixus, and a daughter, Helle. They were the light of the kingdom, reminders of a sacred union between the mortal and the divine. But the affections of mortal kings are as fickle as the weather, and Athamos' gaze soon fell upon Ino, a princess of Thebes, a woman of fire and flesh whose ambition burned with the intensity of a forge. Her beauty was sharp, her wit a finely honed blade, and in her eyes the children of the cloud nymph were nothing more than obstacles. They were living relics of a past love, standing in the way of the future she envisioned for her own sons. Ino's jealousy was not a fleeting storm, but a slow, creeping poison. She moved through the court with a serpent's grace, her words sweet honey laced with venom. She saw how the people revered Phrixus and Helle, how they saw in them the blessing of the gods, and she knew she could not challenge them directly. Her plan had to be as subtle and devastating as a blight, a sickness that would rot the kingdom from within, making the people themselves demand the very thing she desired. Her scheme began in the fertile fields of Boeotia. Under the cloak of secrecy, she conspired with the women of the kingdom, persuading them that if they parched the seed grain over fire before it was sown, their next harvest would be doubly blessed. It was a lie wrapped in a whisper of folk magic, a piece of cunning so audacious that the simple farming folk, ever trustful, obeyed. They roasted the seeds of wheat and barley until the life within them was extinguished, and then they planted the dead husks in the earth. Spring came, but the fields remained stubbornly brown. The earth, which had always answered the plow with green shoots, now offered only dust. A creeping dread fell over Boeotia as the granaries emptied and the specter of famine loomed. The laughter of children was replaced by the gnawing ache of hunger, and the people's prayers to Demeter went unanswered. King Athamos, his face etched with worry, watched his kingdom wither, while Ino stood by his side, her face a perfect mask of concern, while her heart beat with a triumphant rhythm. The first part of her trap had been sprung. Desperate, King Athamos declared he would send messengers to the holiest of sites, the Oracle of Delphi, to seek Apollo's guidance. This was the moment Ino had been waiting for. Her agents, their palms heavy with her gold, intercepted the king's messengers on the road. They never reached the sacred slopes of Parnassus. Instead, they returned to the court bearing a false prophecy, a lie crafted by Ino and delivered with the solemn weight of divine authority. The words of the oracle fell upon the desperate court like hammer blows on an anvil. The famine was a punishment from the gods, the bribed messengers declared, a curse that could only be lifted by a sacrifice of unparalleled significance. The land demanded blood to be made fertile once more, but not the blood of an animal. It demanded the blood of the king's own house. It demanded the life of his firstborn son, Phrixus. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Athamos paled, his world collapsing into a vortex of horror. To sacrifice his own son? The boy who carried his mother's divine light in his eyes? It was unthinkable, a sacrilege beyond comprehension. But the famine was real, the cries of his people were sharp in his ears, and the prophecy, delivered with the unshakable authority of Delphi, left no room for argument. Ino wept crocodile tears, clinging to her husband's arm, her performance of grief so masterful that none could see the cold victory in her soul. The machinery of doom, so patiently constructed, began to turn, grinding towards its terrible conclusion. The day of the sacrifice dawned under a sky the color of lead. The air was thick with the scent of sacred incense and the palpable stench of fear. Phrixus, still just a boy, was dressed in a white ceremonial robe, his face pale but resolute. He did not understand the politics of the court or the depths of his stepmother's hatred, but he understood duty. He walked with a courage that shamed the grim-faced adults who led him to the high altar, a slab of cold stone overlooking the barren fields. Helle followed, her small face streaked with tears, her hand clutching her brother's, refusing to leave his side. King Athamos stood by the altar, the sacrificial knife in his trembling hand. His eyes met his son's, and in that gaze, a universe of love and regret passed between them. The crowd fell silent, a sea of gaunt faces turned upward, their hope and their horror tangled into a single, unbearable knot. The high priest began the final incantation. The knife was raised, its bronze edge glinting cruelly in the gray light. But from her domain among the clouds, Nephele had been watching. The cloud nymph who had been forced from her husband's side had not abandoned her children. Her grief was not a passive sorrow, but a gathering storm. As the knife began its descent, she unleashed her divine power. The sky did not crack with thunder, nor did it rain down fire. Instead, a light tore through the oppressive gloom, a brilliant, impossible gold. It descended from the heavens not as a bolt of lightning, but as a living creature. With a sound like the rushing of a great wind, a magnificent ram dropped from the clouds and landed softly on the altar, standing between Phrixus and the blade. This was no ordinary animal. This was Chrysomolos, a creature of myth, a gift from the god Hermes, whose fleece was spun from pure, living sunlight. It radiated a warmth that pushed back the chill of the day, and its eyes held a calm, ancient intelligence. Its horns curved like polished ivory, and from its shoulders sprouted